It's the Dyatlov Pass incident. It's one of the weirdest internet mysteries in the whole world, and it might actually be solved.
Something called the Dyatlov Pass. On the 23rd of January, 1959, there was a group of students. They basically were going on a cross-country skiing trip.
In 1959, 10 young hikers set off into the icy Siberian wilderness, but they never came back. Their bodies were found in strange ways, and this became one of the greatest mysteries in history, called the Dyatlov Pass incident. For years, people believed an avalanche was to blame, but new evidence suggests otherwise. Yuri Yudin, the only survivor, has finally broken his silence and given answers that just solved this mystery. What really happened to his friends that fateful night? Join us as we let you in on Yuri Yudin's revelations about the Dyatlov Pass tragedy. The sole survivor of the Dyatlov mystery speaks out. Yuri Yudin was the only one who survived the Dyatlov Pass tragedy of 1959, but it wasn't because of luck or skill. It was because of illness. He had set off on the journey with 9 of his closest friends, all excited for their hiking trip into the freezing Siberian wilderness. The group was full of energy, ready to conquer the harsh conditions of the Ural Mountains. They laughed, shared stories, and planned every step of the trip. Yuri had no reason to believe he would never see them again. Early into the journey, Yuri started feeling sick. He fell ill with severe pain caused by rheumatism and a congenital heart condition. The group encouraged him to rest, but Yuri didn't want to leave them.
Right above the tent and surprised them while they were sleeping, some of them got injured, and they had to cut the tent from the inside to escape. And without appropriate clothes, it was impossible for them to survive with these extreme weather conditions, especially because they didn't want to leave their injured friends behind.
He felt guilty even thinking about it. They were his friends, and they had planned this trip together, but the pain became too much to ignore. Eventually, Yuri had no choice but to turn back. He said goodbye to the group, thinking he would rejoin them later or see them once they returned. What later happened to the 9 hikers? And what did Yuri Yudin, the sole survivor, have to say after the tragedy? Well, keep watching because you're about to find out. Yuri never imagined that leaving his friends would be the last time he would ever see them alive. When news of the tragedy broke out and reached Yuri, he could not believe it. His friends were dead. The strong, capable hikers he had shared so much with were gone. At first, no one knew what had happened to them. Search teams found their bodies in the snow, scattered and broken in strange ways. Some were missing their clothes, others had injuries that were difficult to explain. Their tent had been ripped open from the inside, as if they had been trying to escape something in the middle of the night. Yuri felt a wave of shock and guilt. He had survived by chance, but why? He thought about how close he had been to dying with them. If he hadn't fallen ill, he would have stayed with the group and shared their terrible fate. Yuri often said he felt like fate had chosen him, but he didn't understand why. Instead of feeling lucky, he felt burdened. As time passed, theories about what happened to his friends began to spread. The official explanation was an avalanche. Authorities said the group had panicked and ran from their tent, but Yuri didn't believe it. Yuri would later open up and speak about the tragedy. He spoke often about the deep pain he felt after learning about his friends' mysterious deaths. He described his group as strong, intelligent, and experienced hikers who would not have panicked easily. Yuri could not accept the simple explanation of an avalanche, as the official report claimed. To him, the strange details surrounding their deaths didn't add up. Their tent had been torn open from the inside, as if they were desperately trying to escape. Bodies were found far from the camp, some with severe injuries like broken ribs and skull fractures that didn't match what an avalanche would cause.
The cause of death for all the victims was determined to be hypothermia, but Rustem and Nicholas also had severely crushed skulls, and Ludmila and Alexander Zolotarev had a number of broken ribs.
Others were missing clothes, despite the freezing temperatures. Yuri often questioned what had really happened on that dark, cold night. He said his friends must have faced something terrifying to make them leave their tent so suddenly. He imagined what his friends had felt during their final moments. Were they scared? Did they know what was happening? These questions followed him every day. He spent his life searching for answers, but they never came. For Yuri, surviving while his friends died was a heavy burden. He often said he felt as if fate had spared him for some unknown reason, but it brought him no peace. Their loss haunted him, so Yuri longed for the truth, believing his friends deserved justice and answers that the world still could not give. To understand Yuri's pain and story, we have to find out what exactly really happened to the 9 hikers. Stay tuned because what happened next will shock you. What really happened in the Dyatlov Pass incident? When a group of 10 experienced hikers, led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, set out on a challenging expedition through the Ural Mountains in the Soviet Union, they never expected to meet their end. The team, mostly students from the Ural Polytechnic Institute, had one goal: to earn the highest hiking certification, which is grade 3. To achieve this, they needed to complete a 300-kilometer trek across rough and frozen terrain. All members of the group were well prepared, holding grade 2 certificates and having solid experience in skiing and hiking trips. On January 25, 1959, the group started their journey from the town of Ivdel, fully equipped for the harsh weather ahead. But shortly after starting, one member, Yuri Yudin, fell ill. Reluctantly, he turned back on January 28, not realizing this decision would save his life. The remaining 9 hikers, who were Igor Dyatlov, Zenaida Kolmogorova, Rustam Slobodin, Lyudmila Dubinina, Alexander Kolovatov, Yuri Doroshenko, Nikolai Thibault-Brignol, Semyon Zolotaryov, and Yuri Krivonashenko, continued their journey, unaware of the tragic fate that awaited them. The group pushed forward, facing freezing temperatures and rough terrain. On January 31st, they reached a valley that led to what would later be called Dyatlov Pass. They set up camp and prepared for their next ascent, but a heavy snowstorm caused them to veer off their planned route, leading them to the slopes of Kholat Syakhl, which means dead mountain in the local Mansi language.
After losing their way during a snowstorm, they set up camp on what is known as Kholat Syakhl, which translates to Dead Mountain.
Despite the brutal conditions, the group pressed on, determined to complete their journey. As night fell, they set up their tent on an exposed slope. Winds and temperatures that dropped to -40 degrees Celsius. What happened next remains one of the greatest mysteries of the 20th century. When the group failed to return on schedule, their families grew worried and search teams were sent out. On February 26th, searchers found the group's tent, and the scene was chilling. The tent was damaged, partially collapsed, and covered in snow. It had been cut open from the inside, as though the hikers had desperately tried to escape. Even more confusing was that their shoes, clothing, and equipment were neatly left behind. Inside the tent, rescuers found food that had been partially cooked, as though the group had been interrupted suddenly. The search teams followed tracks leading away from the tent. About 300 meters away, near a small fire, they found the first 2 bodies, Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonashenko. Both were dressed only in their underwear and socks, which was strange, given the freezing temperatures of -25 degrees Celsius to -30 degrees Celsius. Doroshenko had burns on his body, and Krivonashenko had bitten a piece of flesh from his hand, likely out of pain or desperation. A few days later, 3 more bodies were found: Igor Dyatlov, Zenaida Kolmogorova, and Rustam Slobodin. They were discovered in positions that suggested they had been trying to return to the tent. Like the first 2, they had little clothing on and had died from hypothermia. Slobodin, on the other hand, had a minor skull fracture, although it wasn't fatal. The mystery worsened when the last 4 bodies were found in May, buried under several meters of snow in a ravine farther from the tent. Their injuries were far more severe. Nikolai Thibault-Brignol had a fractured skull. Lyudmila Dubinina and Semyon Zolotaryov had massive chest fractures, injuries so intense they were compared to the force of a car crash, but there were no external wounds on their bodies, which made the injuries even more unusual. Dubinina's body was also missing her tongue, eyes, lips, and part of her facial tissue. Some of the others were also missing their eyes and eyebrows, though forensic experts later said these injuries might have been caused by water in a nearby stream. The investigation raised more questions than answers. The Soviet authorities officially concluded that 6 of the hikers had died from hypothermia and 3 from fatal injuries, but they found no evidence of outside involvement. Because of how mysterious it had gotten, many theories about what happened to the hikers began to emerge. Keep watching to find out what exactly are the different theories. Theories surrounding the mystery of the Dyatlov Pass. Being one of Theos' mysterious incidents in modern history, many theories have been put forward over the years to explain what happened to the 9 hikers. The official report concluded that an avalanche was to blame, but not everyone agrees with this explanation. According to the avalanche theory, the group's tent was buried by snow that came sliding down the slope during the night. This forced the hikers to cut their way out of the tent and flee into the freezing cold without proper clothing. Investigators believed the group became disoriented in the darkness and freezing temperatures, eventually succumbing to hypothermia. While this theory seemed logical at first, many experts argued that the slope wasn't steep enough for a real avalanche. The tent was also still partially standing, and the group's belongings inside were undisturbed, which would not happen in a typical avalanche. Another early idea was that the local Mansi tribe had attacked the hikers. The Mansi people lived near the area, and some believed they might have been angry about the group trespassing on sacred land, but this theory was quickly dismissed. The bodies showed no signs of struggle or injuries that would suggest a violent attack. There were no defensive wounds, and no Mansi footprints were found in the snow. The possibility of an animal attack was also considered. Some thought a bear or wolf might have startled the group, causing them to flee their tent in panic, but the bodies showed no bite marks, scratches, or other injuries typical of an animal attack. If a wild animal had attacked, there would have been clear evidence on the hikers' bodies and at the campsite. Things became stranger when traces of radioactive contamination were found on some of the hikers' clothing. This led to theories that the group had stumbled upon a secret Soviet military experiment or a failed weapons test. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union was known for conducting secret projects, often in remote locations. Some believed the hikers may have seen something they weren't supposed to see, like a nuclear test or a new weapon, and had to be silenced. The radiation levels were unusual, but experts couldn't prove they came from a military source. Some of the hikers had also worked in areas linked to nuclear cleanups, which could explain the contamination. Adding to the mystery were reports of strange lights in the sky around the time of the incident. Witnesses claimed to have seen glowing orange orbs or flying spheres over the Ural Mountains. This sparked theories of UFO involvement. Some people believed extraterrestrial beings might have scared the group out of their tent. Others thought the lights were connected to military parachute mines, which could explain the severe injuries found on some of the bodies. These mines explode mid-air, creating a shockwave that could cause the kind of internal damage the hikers suffered without leaving external wounds. The case's lead investigator, Lev Ivanov, later admitted that his team saw unusual flying spheres during the search, but he said they were told to ignore this information and focus on a simpler explanation. This increased the UFO and military experiment theories, leaving people wondering what the authorities were trying to hide. The hikers' strange injuries, the tent being cut open from the inside, and the radioactive clothing also add to the confusion. While the avalanche theory is still the official explanation, many people still believe there was more to the story. This may be hard to believe, but what if we told you that the icy lands of Antarctica used to be covered by lush green vegetation thousands of years ago? Unbelievable, right? Well, that's exactly what researchers have discovered through their fascinating exploration of this frozen continent. It turns out that Antarctica was once home to a vibrant 90-million-year-old rainforest, complete with a variety of plants and animals, including possums and beavers.
A mission to the Antarctic has revealed fossilized plant roots preserved deep under the ocean since the time of the dinosaurs. It seems this freezing landscape was once home to a lush forest.
Fossil evidence has revealed that the climate in this region was exceptionally warm at the time, with an average annual temperature of around 12 degrees Celsius, which is roughly 2 degrees warmer than the mean temperature in Germany today. During the summer months, the mercury would climb as high as 19 degrees Celsius, with water temperatures in the rivers and swamps reaching 20 degrees. The amount and intensity of rainfall were even similar to that of modern-day Wales. To support such a thriving ecosystem, the researchers conclude that the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere must have been far higher than previously assumed for the Cretaceous period. This incredible discovery challenges our previous understanding of the Cretaceous, which was already known as the warmest period in the past 140 million years. But that's not all. Analysis of ancient ice cores from Antarctica has also provided valuable insights into the continent's dramatic climate shifts over geological timescales. These ice cores have shown that over the past several 100,000 years, temperatures in Antarctica have fluctuated by more than 10 degrees Celsius, correlating with the glacial and interglacial periods seen in the northern hemisphere.
The ice core's layers are like tree rings, each layer representing a year of weather and snow.
We can tell what the temperatures were. We can tell how rough the oceans were around Antarctica.
This dramatic shift in Antarctica's climate and the recent rise in carbon dioxide highlights the scary possibility that the Antarctic ice sheets would melt more rapidly than normal. Antarctica Pyramid. The appearance of mysterious, pyramid-like structures in various parts of the world has long fueled speculation about the presence of extraterrestrial life on our planet. And the recent discovery of a peculiar, pyramid-shaped mass in the Ellsworth mountain range of Antarctica has only added fuel to the fire. A satellite that was directed to the southern part to provide an aerial view of that part of the continent revealed many strange formations, but amongst all, one that stood out was a structure of perfect pyramid symmetry with an astounding 2 kilometer square at its base.
In 2016, satellite images revealed a curious formation emerging from the ice that some researchers believe could be a man-made pyramid.
Which is almost like the iconic Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. Given the extreme isolation and inhospitable conditions of Antarctica, where human presence is extremely limited, the presence of these mysterious structures on the frozen landscape immediately set the internet ablaze with speculation and theories. And before you knew it, some enthusiasts suggested that the pyramid could be the remnant of an ancient civilization that thrived in the region long before 1,000 years ago, while another group claimed it was the handiwork of extraterrestrial visitors that were drawn to the continent for some unknown reasons. However, geologists and experts found these speculations to be very outlandish. So to debunk these speculations, a certain geologist at the German Research Center for Geosciences in Potsdam, Dr. Mitch Darcy, said that the so-called pyramids are actually natural formations known as nunataks, which are peaks of exposed rock protruding above the surrounding glaciers and ice sheets. Though his explanation did make sense, there's still a possibility that the structure is really a pyramid, and that his response is a deliberate cover-up effort to divert attention from whatever is happening in and around it, just like the government did with the Black Pyramid in Alaska. What do you think? Antarctica Tunnels. Still, on the topic of the possibility that the icy landscape of Antarctica is or used to be home to some extraterrestrials, another piece of evidence has come forth with the discovery of strangely well-constructed tunnels. In another survey, researchers from UK universities and the British Antarctic Survey Centre decided to take a closer look at the Filchner Ronne ice shelf in West Antarctica. They had this super high-tech plane loaded with all kinds of advanced sensors and equipment, and they were just flying around, mapping out the land, ice, and even the sea underneath. But when they started scanning below the ice with their radar, they were shocked to discover massive arched tunnels stretching an unbelievable 820 feet high.
So a new discovery in Antarctica. Researchers find new life under an ice shelf, and the discovery was an accident.
Which is high enough to comfortably house the Eiffel Tower with room to spare. Needless to say, the researchers were absolutely amazed when they saw these tunnels on their scans. At first, they tried to come up with a natural explanation that maybe the tunnels were carved out by flowing meltwater, slowly eroding the ice over time, which does make sense since the water could be concentrated in certain areas instead of spreading out evenly. But some people were still not satisfied with this explanation. The more they looked at these tunnels, the more their size and carefully sculpted structures looked man-made. And soon they started to wonder that perhaps, just like the perceived pyramid, they were created by ancient, or even advanced, civilization that once thrived in the icy region. Which of the parties has your support? If you're still indecisive about where to pitch your tent, the next discovery will give you that confirmation you need. Underground Cathedral. In addition to the perfectly carved caves that scientists found in Antarctica, scientists also found an ice city that was completely hidden in the ice. During one of their routine mapping of the area, they noticed a strange groove in the ice, hinting that there might be a river flowing underneath. Intrigued, they decided to take a closer look using high-tech radar equipment, only to find, to their utmost astonishment, the most beautiful, massive, cathedral-like cavern, which they believed was carved out by a subglacial river.
The under-ice landscape is full of colors, full of light, full of life. It's like you step into a forest. It's very diverse and it's beautiful.
Curious to know what this 10-kilometer-long cathedral, which was almost as tall as the Empire State Building, held within it, they lowered a camera down into the cavern. And boy, were they wowed. Not only was this structure gigantic, but the interior was made up of icy walls that were carefully sculpted into these beautiful, undulating patterns, almost like the intricate stone carvings you'd find in a real cathedral. It was like stepping into a frozen underground palace, hidden away from the world above. But that wasn't even the most surprising part. When they went deeper, their camera spotted some strange and wonderful creatures swimming in the dark waters below. Among them were the anemones that were clinging to the icy ceiling. Normally, anemones live on the seafloor, but these ones had adapted to life under the ice, forming this upside-down garden. And swimming alongside them were bizarre, shrimp-like crustaceans and even some fish. And that was how a whole secret world was found, just thriving in this hidden, frozen cavern. Scientists, on one hand, couldn't stop asking how these creatures adapted to survive in this extreme, lightless environment, completely cut off from the outside world. The world's loneliest ATM. Speaking of artificial structures, another of the most fascinating and unique discoveries of the frozen continent of Antarctica is the world's loneliest ATM, nestled in the heart of McMurdo Station.
The Wells Fargo ATM at McMurdo Station is the most southern one in the world. And it's the loneliest ATM in the world as well, as there isn't another one for hundreds and hundreds of miles.
McMurdo Station is a remote scientific research hub and the largest of its kind on the entire continent, and depending on the time of year, its population can range anywhere from 250 to over 1,000 people. This particular ATM is not your average cash machine. It is one of two operated by Wells Fargo at the McMurdo Station, with the other serving as a spare parts source. Interestingly, the officials at Wells Fargo are taking no chances with this remote and crucial piece of infrastructure. To make sure the ATM performs at its best, the machines undergo a complete checkup and software update every 2 years. The staff are thoroughly trained to handle simple repairs and maintenance tasks, ensuring the ATM remains operational even in the harshest conditions. And there's another full-size ATM just in case they need to swap out any faulty parts. Security-wise, the company is also extremely tight-lipped about how much cash is actually stored in the machine at any given time. The only thing that is publicly known is that there is a security camera installed within the ATM unit itself. The most surprising thing about this ATM is that even though the McMurdo Station is situated relatively close to territory claimed by New Zealand, the ATM only dispenses US dollars. This is because there is no official currency used throughout the continent of Antarctica. The landmass itself does not have its own national dollar or any other type of native Antarctic currency. Because of that, an organization called the Antarctica Overseas Exchange Office started to produce special collectible banknotes that are meant to represent Antarctica, and they can be purchased and sold at their face value as long as they are still valid. So residents who need to exchange their withdrawn US dollars are left with no choice than to trek 2 miles to the nearby Scott Base Research Station, where they can exchange it for these fancy notes. Green icebergs. Another incredible drone-assisted discovery in Antarctica are the mesmerizing green icebergs.
Green icebergs have been turning up in Antarctica, and scientists just figured out this ice, this green ice, was coming from beneath the ice shelves, the floating ice shelves.
These natural wonders are like nothing you've ever seen before, with a captivating emerald hue that's far more vivid and striking than the typical blue and white icebergs we're all familiar with. Now, for the longest time, these green icebergs have been a real head-scratcher for researchers. When the first explorers and sailors stumbled upon them back in the early 20th century, they were completely puzzled by this unusual coloration. At first, the leading theory was that the green color came from dissolved organic matter, like dead marine plants and animals, trapped in the ice. The idea was that this organic material would appear yellow, and when combined with the natural blue of the ice, it would create a green effect. But further research showed that the green ice didn't actually have any unusually high levels of these organic impurities, so that theory just didn't hold up. This sent the scientists back to the drawing board, determined to uncover the real secret behind the iceberg's captivating color. After years of research, scientists were finally able to crack the case. What they found was that as glaciers flow over the rocky terrain of Antarctica, they grind up iron-bearing minerals into a fine powder that gets incorporated into the marine ice at the base of the ice shelves. When this iron-rich ice breaks off and becomes an iceberg, the iron oxide particles scatter the light in a way that gives the ice its striking green appearance. The snow cruiser. In an exploration of the icy landscapes of Antarctica, a group of scientists stumbled on the legendary Antarctic snow cruiser, under 23 feet of snow. The snow cruiser was a massive, 55-foot-long and 20-ton experimental vehicle that was developed for Admiral Richard E. Byrd's 1939 to 1941 Antarctic expedition.
This is the Antarctic snow cruiser, designed to push through the harshest conditions on the planet. And it'll end up as one of history's greatest engineering legends.
Admiral Richard E. Byrd was a pioneering American explorer who played a major role in the exploration of Antarctica. He was the first person to fly over both the North and South Poles, a remarkable achievement that launched his Antarctic adventures. And he didn't even stop there. To further seal his place as an unrivaled explorer, he further led several major expeditions to the frozen continent in the following decades. All his expeditions only made sense when the U.S. had staked claims to various regions of the continent, and it was only his detailed surveys and aerial surveys that provided the evidence needed to bolster these claims. Now, back to the 1939 to 1941 expedition. In their earlier expeditions, Byrd and his crews had struggled to effectively traverse the vast, frozen landscapes of Antarctica using traditional vehicles and equipment. The extreme cold, deep snow, and treacherous ice made long-range exploration and supply missions extremely difficult. After Byrd's second Antarctic expedition in the early 1930s, it became clear that a new, specialized vehicle was needed to overcome these challenges. And that was how the snow cruiser was born. The snow cruiser was an engineering marvel that was powered by a 200-horsepower diesel engine with a top speed of 30 mph on smooth ice. It was like a part-tracked vehicle, part bus, and part mobile research station, with features like living quarters, a small kitchen, a workshop, storage for supplies, and even an aircraft hangar. The idea was for it to be a self-sufficient unit that could travel long distances, house a crew, and conduct scientific research. However, despite its ambitious design, the snow cruiser encountered numerous problems during its initial test runs in Antarctica. The massive size and weight of the vehicle made it difficult to maneuver and control on the ice. The tires repeatedly got stuck in the soft snow, and the complex systems on board frequently malfunctioned in the extreme cold. After just a few weeks, the snow cruiser was essentially abandoned, and the crew ended up using it as a stationary living quarters instead. And when the expedition ended, the snow cruiser was left behind in Antarctica, only to be rediscovered recently. The Endurance. In 2022, a group led by the Falklands Maritime Heritage Trust set out to locate the wreckage of Shackleton's ship, the Endurance, exactly 100 years after Shackleton's funeral. This iconic vessel had sunk in the Weddell Sea all the way back in 1915.
She hasn't been seen in over 100 years. This is the Endurance, resting nearly 10,000 feet down in the dark, freezing waters at the bottom of Antarctica's Weddell Sea.
And many people had given up hope of ever finding it again. But these explorers were determined to uncover this piece of history. Frankly, the expedition wasn't an easy one, as the researchers had to battle through constantly shifting sea ice, raging snowstorms, and freezing temperatures as low as 18 degrees Celsius. That's about 0.4 degrees Celsius. But luckily, they were able to take advantage of some unusually low sea ice levels to reach the area where they believed the Endurance had gone down. After the hard work and challenges they faced, with the help of an automated water vehicle, which was equipped with high-resolution cameras, the explorers finally spotted the Endurance buried almost 10,000 feet below the surface. What are your thoughts about the Dyatlov Pass incident? Let us know in the comments section below. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Click on the next video displayed on your screen. You will enjoy it.